Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to the Virtual House Church. My name is Jake Grant, and I will be your host for our little study through these chapters in Exodus. This week, we are studying Torah portion Yitro, Jethro, and we're going to go ahead and look into the Virtual House Church website just so you guys can get acquainted with where you can get a lot of really great resources. After Rob passed away, this is one of the last gifts he kind of left us, which is this wonderful resource of all these years of built-up research regarding the Torah and studying through the scriptures. And if you can see on my screen here, let me just make sure it's appearing for you guys. Let me see here. Yeah, let's add this to the stream so you guys can see. This is the Virtual House Church website. You, of course, can get there at vhc.ephraimawakening.com. And if you look on the screen, I'm dealing with one monitor. I'm in a new undisclosed location, so that's why I'm having a little issues with my frames right now. But go on down to Exodus Studies, and this is the Torah portion that we're going to be studying, which is Yitro, Exodus week 17. So it covers Exodus 18:1 through chapter 20:26. We're going to get through the Big 10 today, guys. Guess what? This should be on everybody's homework list. One of the reasons we like to study the Torah portions is because it really brings a silver thread of continuity throughout all the scriptures. With the foundation of the commandments given in the Torah and the identity and the struggles of the people and the prophets and the writings that we study that are related to these Torah portions, and then even New Testament scriptures that all usually relate in a significant way to what we're studying. We can watch the Parsha in 60 seconds video here in a second, but I think I'm going to check and see if we have maybe some music to play. Let me get all situated here a little bit. So anyways, welcome to the Virtual House Church. I see some people joining the comments. As you study with us, once again, I'm not a teacher. I'm not a pastor. I'm just a student, just like Rob was when he started the Virtual House Church. In the many years that I've been helping with the Virtual House Church since 2017, we're just all fellow students, learning and studying together. It's been a few weekends since I've been hosting live. We've had some great replays and some older episodes that we kind of put some of the new word audio drama with and some new music. But we're finally kind of settled in a new location. I was in Missouri, but at the time we are now at a new location, undisclosed location, right? And anyways, that's enough about what I've not been on the past few weeks. Let me go ahead and jump over here and see a good song or two to get us kick-started with. I mean, it's Shabbat, right? You have in Leviticus 23, a compilation of all the festivals and feasts of the Most High, these celebrations, these appointed times, these things called Moedim, right? And Moedim are his appointed times that he's like, hey, this is a date. I want to meet with you. So the very first thing that Leviticus 23 talks about as being an appointed time is the Sabbath, the seventh day rest, because in creation, he rested on the seventh day. And so it's not just this rote process, right, of just laying in bed and doing nothing, but it's, in a way, it's a celebration. It's a time for us to meet with our Creator. So that's why, I think it's good to play some music, lift your spirits, and dig into the word, because in the scriptures, this is the bread of life, the Messiah, Yeshua, right? He came pointing to the commandments as the way we love our Creator. For the love of God is to keep his commandments, right? And so as we study the Torah, we're going to read the 10 commandments this week. We can learn how it looks like to keep those two greatest commandments, right, that Christianity talks about, which is loving God and loving your neighbor. And as we study his Torah, all the the supposed rabbinical traditional 613 commandments, right? Some of those apply to you and some don't. Some are for women, some are for men, some are for people who own slaves, which I don't think anybody owns any slaves today. There's some for landowners, there's some for people who are sowing a field, right? All of these commandments demonstrate one of two principles, right? That can be boiled down to, right? Which is either loving our Creator and keeping His commandments just because He says to. Sometimes we don't understand, but it's said that sometimes the greatest act of faith is keeping the commandments we don't get, because that shows that we believe in the one who gave the commandments, right? And then the other side, when you boil certain commandments down, it comes down to loving your neighbor, treating them fairly, equitably, justly, right? So let's go ahead. We haven't played Good Shepherd for a while, so let's play Good Shepherd from Lyndon and Ruth. It was a song that they did in tribute to Rob, but it's also just a good song to sing along to on Shabbat. So here we go.
For He's our good shepherd, for He looks after all the broken and bruised, all the lost and confused, and He calls us by name, and He washes away all our sins, so we bow and surrender to our good shepherd. We are all lost sometimes, and we've all failed to find joy that is found in Yeshua. But He will come after to where you wander. He will call you back to Him and give you peace. Oh, He'll give you peace, for He's our good shepherd, for He looks after all the broken and bruised, all the lost and confused, and He calls us by name, and He washes away all our sins, so we bow and surrender to our good shepherd. Oh, He's our good shepherd. Oh, we may lose a few of those we love and knew, and our hearts may be broken, but He is still working, and this life is a journey, and in the midst of our hurting, He is giving us His love and His mercy. Oh, He's giving us mercy, for He's our good shepherd, for He looks after all the broken and bruised, all the lost and confused, and He calls us by name, and He washes away all our sins, so we bow and surrender to our good shepherd. Oh, He's our good shepherd. Oh, He keeps to His sheep, and He tends to the weak. He leaves the 99 to seek the one who's hard to find, and He calls us His chosen, and He blesses the broken by giving us His grace. Now we follow His ways. He keeps to His sheep, and He tends to the weak. Oh, He leads the lost and confused, and he calls us by name, and he washes away all our sins, so we bow and surrender to our good shepherd. He's our good shepherd. For he's our good shepherd. Oh, he looks after all the broken, bruised, all the lost and confused, and he calls us by name, and he washes away all our sins, so we bow and surrender to our good shepherd.
All right, so that was a great song from our friends Lyndon and Ruth. They have done some very beautiful songs over the past couple of years. We've got to know them since, I think, Sukkot 2 years ago, and just a wonderful blessing to hear some of their music. Really, Hebrew centric, understanding its obedience and the Messiah together. That's the narrow path. And so anyways, it's great to, once again, be on here with you guys. I think the next thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to play the Parsha in 60 seconds video, which is a summary of this week's Torah portion. And then we're going to play the long, reading, the complete reading through the portion of the, sorry, having some kind of internet issues here, it looks like. But anyways, let's go ahead and play the Parsha in 60 seconds video, and then we'll get into the reading.
Welcome to Parsha in 60 seconds. Today's portion is from Exodus 18:1 through 20:23. It is called Yitro, which means Jethro, who was Moses' father-in-law. Moses was visited by Jethro, his father-in-law. While Moses was dealing with all the problems of the people, Jethro suggested making known the law and appointing leaders to judge the people. Moses agreed, and Jethro went home. Moses went up to Mount Sinai and met with God. God would make a covenant with all the Israelites in 3 days. 3 days later, Mount Sinai was smoky, quaking, and loud as God spoke in thunder. God came down on the top of Mount Sinai and called Moses up. Anyone else who touched the mountain would die. God spoke, 1. I the Lord am your God. 2. You shall not have other gods besides me. 3. You shall not use my name as a swear word. 4. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 5. Honor your father and mother. 6. You shall not murder. 7. You shall not commit adultery. 8. You shall not steal. 9. You shall not bear false witness. 10. You shall not covet. The people were afraid of God's voice and asked Moses to speak for God. God told Moses more detailed laws. And that is Yitro in 60 seconds.
Very cool. All right. I know we love showing those. They're a great summary, and sometimes they're a little humorous. And just so you guys can get prepared as we're about to read through, once again, week 17, Yitro is Exodus 18:1 through 20:26. If you're ever wondering what portion, at least that I'm following and I'm trying to implement with, cyclically what we're keeping with the Virtual House Church at the time, I really like to use the website, the First Fruits of Zion Torah portions.ffoz.org site. And that is a great place to, each week they update what that week's Torah portion is. And they give you the kind of the generic readings. Of course, you're going to get more resources over on the Virtual House Church page, but this will let you know kind of each week what we're kind of studying through. As we go through this year's cycle, and it's got some really great little portion outlines and bullet points and some good articles that they add to it. It's a messianic based site. Of course, up to you guys to check that out or not. We're going to be looking through later on a portion of the Pentateuchal Targum, see if there's any little extra tidbits here or there in the Pseudo-Jonathan Targums. Sometimes it has little, additional information. I know in a coming portion, there's actually a whole story of, Moses going up to the mountain, and Aaron, whenever the people wanted to sacrifice the golden calf, they ended up killing the other guy that was holding Moses's arms up during the fight against the Amorites, the people of the land, when they were coming through, and the Israelites, they band together and were like, make us an idol, and they killed the guy who held up the other arm of Moses, and that scared Aaron to the point where he went through with helping them out. But we don't get that in the kind of the traditional KJV text, and so things like that, stories like that, little details we can find in the Targums, and it seems to be a second witness for a lot of instances for books like the book of Jasher, which we'll also look through the book of Jasher this week and see if there's any interesting tidbits. I don't know if it covers this particular Torah portion study, but it's always worth having it up for some extra reference material. And also, the book of Jubilees is an interesting extra biblical text that sometimes can add some interesting insight to some of the discussion. So I think Yitro or Jethro is an interesting topic, right? The name of Moses' father-in-law. I oftentimes in the past have confused Reuel, which is given to, the man in Midian, right? The priest in Midian, and Jethro, right? Reuel and Jethro, in my mind, have always been synonymous with each other. But come to find out, when you study through, I believe it's Jasher, and I think also the Targums reference this, so they become kind of like second witnesses for each other, that Reuel is the grandfather of Zipporah, and Jethro is the father. So we have two different entities. Both, it makes sense whenever you kind of apply the father, that somebody who's your grandfather is still your father, right? So the language still works in our traditional scriptures, but it's kind of confusing because they don't really dictate the difference between Reuel and Jethro. And of course, in this story, we have it talking about Jethro coming and giving counsel to Moses. So let's go ahead and play the word audio and listen to the reading, and then we'll get into some study.
Shemot, Exodus, chapter 18. When Yitro, the priest of Midian, Moshe's father-in-law, heard all that Elohim had done for Moshe, and for Yasharel his people, and that Yahweh had brought Yasharel out of Mitzrayim, then Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moshe's woman, after he had sent her back, and her two sons, of which the name of the one was Gershom, for he said, I have been an alien in a strange land. And the name of the other was Eliezer, for the Elohai of my father, said he, was my help, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. And Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, came with his sons and woman unto Moshe in the wilderness, where he encamped at the mount of Elohim. And he said unto Moshe,
I, your father-in-law Yitro, am come unto you, and your woman, and her two sons with her.
And Moshe went out to meet his father-in-law, and did obeisance, and kissed him, and they asked each other of their welfare, and they came into the tent. And Moshe told his father-in-law all that Yahweh had done unto Pharaoh, and unto the Mitzrayim for Yasharel's sake, and all the travail that had come upon them by the way, and how Yahweh delivered them. And Yitro rejoiced for all the goodness which Yahweh had done unto Yasharel, whom he had delivered out of the hand of the Mitzrayim. And Yitro said,
Blessed be Yahweh, who has delivered you out of the hand of the Mitzrayim, and out of the hand of Pharaoh, who has delivered the people from under the hand of the Mitzrayim. Now I know that Yahweh is greater than all Elohim, for in the thing wherein they dealt proudly, he was above them.
And Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for Elohim. Naharon came, and all the elders of Yasharel, to eat bread with Moshe's father-in-law before Elohim. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moshe sat to judge the people, and the people stood by Moshe from the morning unto the evening. And when Moshe's father-in-law saw all that he did to the people, he said,
What is this that you do to the people? Why sit you yourself alone, and all the people stand by you from morning unto evening?
And Moshe said unto his father-in-law, Because the people come unto me to inquire of Elohim. When they have a matter, they come unto me, and I judge between one and another. And I do make them know the statutes of Elohim and his Torah. And Moshe's father-in-law said unto him,
The thing you do is not good. You will surely wear away, both you and this people that is with you, for this thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to perform it yourself alone. Hearken now unto my voice. I will give you counsel, and Elohim shall be with you. Be for the people to Elohimward, that you may bring the causes unto Elohim, and you shall teach them ordinances and Torah, and shall show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do. Moreover, you shall provide out of all the people able men, such as fear Elohim, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, and rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. And let them judge the people at all seasons, and it shall be that every great matter they shall bring unto you, but every small matter they shall judge. So shall it be easier for you, and they shall bear the burden with you. If you shall do this thing, and Elohim command you so, then you shall be able to endure, and all this people shall also go to their place in peace.
So Moshe hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law, and did all that he had said. And Moshe chose able men out of all Yasharel, and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. And they judged the people at all seasons. The hard causes they brought unto Moshe, but every small matter they judged themselves. And Moshe let his father-in-law depart, and he went his way into his own land. Shemot, Exodus, chapter 19. In the 3rd month, when the children of Yasharel were gone forth out of the land of Mitzrayim, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. For they were departed from Rephidim, and were come to the desert of Sinai, and had pitched in the wilderness. And there Yasharel camped before the mount. And Moshe went up unto Elohim, and Yahweh called unto him out of the mountain, saying,
Thus shall you say to the house of Yaakov, and tell the children of Yasharel, Ye have seen what I did unto the Mitzrayim, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and guard my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people. For all the earth is mine, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak unto the children of Yasharel.
And Moshe came and called for the elders of the people, and laid before their faces all these words which Yahweh commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, All that Yahweh has spoken, we will do. And Moshe returned the words of the people unto Yahweh. And Yahweh said unto Moshe,
Lo, I come unto you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and believe you forever.
And Moshe told the words of the people unto Yahweh. And Yahweh said unto Moshe,
Go unto the people, and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready against the third day. For the third day Yahuwah will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And you shall set bounds unto the people round about, saying, Take heed to yourselves, that ye go not up unto the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever touches the mount shall be surely put to death. There shall not a hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through. Whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. When the shofar sounds long, they shall come up to the mount.
And Moshe went down from the mount unto the people, and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said unto the people, Be ready against the third day, come not at your women. And it came to pass on the third day in the morning, that there were thunders and lightnings, and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the shofar exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. And Moshe brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with Elohim, and they stood at the nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because Yahweh descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. And when the voice of the shofar sounded long, and waxed louder and louder, Moshe spoke, and Elohim answered him by a voice. And Yahweh came down upon Mount Sinai, on the top of the mount. And Yahweh called Moshe up to the top of the mount, and Moshe went up. And Yahweh said unto Moshe,
Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto El Yahuwah, to gaze, and many of them perish. And let the priests also, which come near to El Yahuwah, sanctify themselves, lest Yahuwah break forth upon them.
And Moshe said unto El Yahweh, The people cannot come up unto Mount Sinai, for you charged us, saying, Set bounds about the mount, and sanctify it. And Yahweh said unto him,
Away, get you down, and you shall come up you and Aaron with you. But let not the priests and the people break through to come up unto El Yahuwah, lest he break forth upon them.
So Moshe went down unto the people, and spoke unto them. Shemot, Exodus, chapter 20. And Elohim spoke all these words, saying,
I am Yahuwah Elohika, which have brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other Elohim before me. You shall not make any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in the heavens above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow yourself to them, nor serve them, for I, Yahuwah Elohika, am a jealous El, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and guard my commandments. You shall not take the name of Yahuwah Elohika in vain, for Yahuwah will not hold him guiltless that takes his name in vain. Remember the day of the Sabbath, to keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahuwah Elohika. In it you shall not do any work, you nor your son, nor your daughter, your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger that is within your gates. For in 6 days Yahuwah made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore Yahuwah blessed the day of the Sabbath, and hallowed it. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which Yahuwah Elohika gives you. You shall not kill. You shall not break wedlock. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not lust after your neighbor's house. You shall not lust after your neighbor's woman, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is your neighbor's.
And all the people saw the thunderings and the lightnings and the noise of the shofar and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. And they said unto Moshe,
Speak with us, and we will hear, but let not Elohim speak with us, lest we die.
And Moshe said unto the people, Fear not, for Elohim has come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that you sin not. And the people stood afar off, and Moshe drew near unto the thick darkness where Elohim was. And Yahweh said unto Moshe,
Thus you shall say unto the children of Yasharel, Ye have seen that I have talked with you from heaven. Ye shall not make with me Elohai of silver, neither shall ye make unto you Elohai of gold. An altar of earth you shall make unto me, and shall sacrifice thereon your burnt offerings, and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen. In all places where I record my name, I will come unto you, and I will bless you. And if you will make me an altar of stone, you shall not build it of hewn stone. For if you lift up your tool upon it, you have polluted it. Neither shall you go up by steps unto my altar, that your nakedness be not discovered thereon.
Sweet. All right. Thank you guys for listening through on that. I know sometimes the voices can be kind of character-like, but we had a lot of fun making that. And, another great resource we like to call out every week is the Torah portion workbooks. These are very, very cheap. It's a great way to still support Sheila. And you can find these at the Virtual House Church store on the VHC website. And at the end of each portion, Rob had these questions that are really great study questions for people to ask. And I want to just remind you guys what they are so that you can maybe add in the chat, add in the comment how you would answer this question. So the first one would be, how does this week's Torah portion relate to the half Torah or the Brit Hadashah portion? So for those of you who read the New Testament scriptures and the prophet section, get that answer ready. Please start putting those in the chat and stuff, and we'll go through and I'll kind of have a open discussion with you guys who are watching live. What did you find most interesting about this week's reading? So what stood out to you about what we just heard about him coming down on the mountain? Personally, just recently I was on my friend I was on my friend's website, and I'm trying to think of what book it was. That's what I'm getting caught up on here. But there was a text. I think it was the Targum of Ezekiel or Isaiah. But it kind of referenced how the Most High, he made this statement in this Targum translation. I'm so sorry. I will look for the reference that I'm talking about, but it was so striking that it's really stood out to me. But he mentions that he actually came down to the sons of Ishmael and the sons of Esau before he came down on the mountain to Moses, and that they ignored him when he descended in fire on a mountain near them to see, hey, look, I'm here to meet with you. Are you going to come up? And they didn't have anything to do with him. And I know this sounds like such an obscure reference, and you're probably like, oh, where's that in the Bible? But I just read it last week, and it was so striking. I'm going to look for that reference again. But it was just really peculiar to me because I've never heard that before. And it seemed to me like he was giving those other kind of cast off black sheeps, right, still a chance, but it just demonstrated that they were still rejecting his ways and going their own way, the descendants of Ishmael and Esau. And that was always interesting to me, how he came down on the mountain in such a spectacle. And for many years, I remember looking in my, your picture book Bible, or you flip to the back of those really expensive Bibles and you have all those beautiful maps, right? And I remember how Sinai or Mount Sinai was always in the little like peninsula shape there between Saudi Arabia and Egypt, right? They crossed over here on the left, they entered into the desert, area, and some mountain there was Mount Sinai. However, in recent years, it's been uncovered that there is a much more likely location for where this event took place. And that location is Jabal al-Lulz in Saudi Arabia. And it was based on some of the early research of Ron Wyatt, who snuck in there, illegally crawling over fences and stuff, discovered a mountaintop that is burnt black. And all kinds of Paleo Hebrew carvings and even a giant split rock, all these different things pointing to the fact that this location that this story is happening was actually in Saudi Arabia. And it was actually a much larger basin where millions of people could gather at the base of the mountain compared to any location in that Sinai Peninsula. And I believe the reason that has been identified traditionally as where Mount Sinai was because the mother of Constantine went on a pilgrimage, and she went to all these holy places, and she kind of determined, oh, this is the place, that's the place. And according to my understanding, might be misremembering this, so just don't take my word for it, do your own research. That's why they chose that Sinai Peninsula, which is still called the Sinai Peninsula today. But it actually turns out that she was wrong. And even though they put a monastery there and claimed that that's the holy place of Mount Sinai where all these events happened, it was much more likely this other location. And so to help anybody who's not familiar with this, or to just kind of share a really cool video I found, it's a fascinating kind of documentary, about 20 minutes long, breaking down the real Mount Sinai location. Since we're talking about this scene where they're all gathered and they just left Egypt and they're all gathered at the mountain, I wanted to show it so that you guys can kind of put into your head where they're at, what it looks like, why this is the evidence. And so I'm going to share this video and hope you guys enjoy, and then we'll get back into starting to study out the 10 commandments that he gave them from the mountain, and talking a little bit more about the scriptures here. So let's go ahead and check this video out about the real location of Mount Sinai.
For generations, we have been taught that we had to believe the story of the Exodus on faith alone. We were told that Mount Sinai, where Moses received the 10 Commandments, was located in Egypt, but there was no real evidence to make it believable. No pictures of left-behind artifacts, practically nothing to validate one of the most important stories of the Bible. The Bible says over 70 times that the Israelites went out of Egypt to Midian, which would be mostly or entirely modern-day Saudi Arabia. Is it true that there is very little evidence that the Exodus story happened, or have we actually just been looking in the wrong spot? While the theory of Moses and the Israelites being in Saudi Arabia is a relatively new theory to those of us in the outside world, it isn't new to the locals living there. We were frequently approached by Saudis eager to talk to Americans for the first time face to face. And one of the first things they would say with excitement was, "Did you know Moses was here? Let me show you where he and his people were." The tradition that the mountain in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula is Mount Sinai only dates back to the 4th century AD. New research based on Jewish, Christian, and Islamic sources indicate that there is a tradition that is 600 years older, and according to that tradition, Mount Sinai is in northwest Saudi Arabia. This other tradition points to Jabal Makla, a peak on the mountain range known as Jebel al-Lawz, as the true Mountain of Moses. Several historical sources, including Josephus, recorded that Mount Sinai is the highest mountain near a city that is today called Al-Bad. Locals refer to Jabal Makla as Jebel Musa, the Mountain of Moses.
So you call this one Jabal Musa?
Jabal Musa.
One of the distinguishing features of this mountain is the blackened top that you can see right behind me. The Bible says that God descended upon Mount Sinai as a fire. The blackened peaks stick out from the surrounding areas, and the rocks are only black from the outside. Researchers disagree as to whether the blackened rocks are actual evidence of God descending upon the mountain as a fire like the Bible says, or whether it's natural volcanic rock. A small handful of Americans tried to sneak into this area in the late 1970s and the 1980s. They were arrested, and their photos and videos were confiscated by the Saudi police. Their evidence was lost. However, images and videos slowly began leaking out to the outside world. According to those who snuck in and were arrested, these sites were being kept secret by the Saudi regime, a theocracy that hid them from the world using fences and police and the threat of force. As I tried to understand why the Saudis were hiding this important site, I began reaching out to sources in the Islamic world. For 15 years, I've been in the fields of intelligence, counterterrorism, and international relations, and one of my best contacts had a story to tell. He used to belong to a jihadist group, and he even had meetings with Pakistani intelligence and close associates of Osama bin Laden. And now, he's speaking out for the first time.
When I was in the jihad world, we all knew that the Mount Sinai was in Saudi Arabia. The people on the outside, even most Muslims, had no idea that it was there because we fighters didn't want anyone to know about it. We all knew that the Saudi government hid it and protected it with security, and we all agreed with it. We believe that if a site, even a holy site, is visited by people and used for idolatry, it should be destroyed. But our hiding it, according to the Islamic law, is what saved it, so you can see it today and appreciate it.
Moses flees Egypt after killing an Egyptian who he saw abusing one of the Hebrew slaves. He then escapes to Midian as a fugitive. In Midian, Moses sits by a well and he meets the daughters of Jethro who are getting water for his flock. Moses then marries one of his daughters. We are in the ancient land of Midian right now, near the town that locals describe as originally being the land of Jethro. When we visited this area, multiple Saudis approached us to tell us this is where Jethro and Moses resided. They excitedly pointed to an ancient well that is fenced off and marked as an archaeological site. The Saudis have long believed that this is the well where Moses met the daughters of Jethro, and Muslims from around the world come to see it. The book of Exodus says that the Red Sea crossing happened at a spot named Yam Suf, but experts have long disagreed about where it was. There are two proposed Red Sea crossing sites from Egypt into Saudi Arabia. The first candidate is at the Straits of Tiran, at the bottom of Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. The second candidate is at Egypt's Nuweiba Beach. Dr. Glenn Fritz, who has a PhD in environmental geography, conducted a massive study of the land and all the historical references about where the crossing happened. He found only one exact match: Egypt's Nuweiba Beach. Nuweiba Beach is almost 5 miles long and 3 miles wide, providing enough room for the Israelite population to fit. Here, they'd be trapped with the mountains on both sides, the Red Sea in front of them, and Pharaoh's army right behind them. Amazingly, there is a path under the water from Egypt into Saudi Arabia. The path is not too steep. The Israelites could have easily walked across if the waters were parted. Underwater research by Dr. Leonard Moeller showed strange shapes in the coral, leading some to believe that the remains of Pharaoh's army are there. According to this theory, the coral wrapped around the debris from Pharaoh's army and retained the shape of the objects after they dissolved. When they brought a metal detector down to the coral anomalies, the readings were consistent with circular patterns of metal resembling the parts of chariots. We had planned to dive near the possible Red Sea crossing point because it's a public diving site with stores where you can go and rent diving equipment. But we weren't allowed to. The Saudi police showed up, and they stayed with us until we left. After the Red Sea crossing, Moses and the Israelites stop at a place near Mount Sinai named Elim. Desperate for water, they find a unique location with 12 wells and 70 palms. Along the path to the possible real Mount Sinai, there is a match for Elim, with many palm trees and, to this day, 12 wells. Saudi locals pointed us to this location and specifically referred to it as Elim. Another major event by Mount Sinai is the incident with the golden calf. While Moses is up on Mount Sinai, some of his followers begin worshiping a golden calf. They place it up on a stand and begin worshiping around it, and they set up an altar in front of it. When Moses comes down from Mount Sinai, he destroys the golden calf and sprinkles its remains into the river that comes down from the mountain. Here, in front of the mountain, we have the remains of what may have been that golden calf worship site. Now behind me, in this fenced-in archaeological site that the Saudis are protecting, you see both a stand with many petroglyphs of cows and people worshiping cows, as well as a structure that is slightly lifted that may be the altar in front of the golden calf stand. There's a sign in Arabic and English warning intruders against going into the area. The local tradition that this is where the golden calf was is so strong that if you approach it, you'll be suspected of searching for gold. According to the Bible, the worshippers of the golden calf say, "These are your gods, O Israel." This verse indicates that there are multiple depictions of bulls as the Israelites are worshiping the golden calf. On the top of the stand where the golden calf would have been placed, there is a circular indent where the rock has been worn down. It's speculated that this is where Moses grounded the golden calf into powder. After Moses destroys the golden calf, 3,000 of the golden calf worshippers are killed, so there must be a spot where thousands of people were buried. About 4 miles from this site, there's a massive ancient graveyard. It appears to be a mass burial site where the graves were dug all at once. It's located just outside the plain where the Israelites would have camped, so it's exactly where it should be if this is where that story took place. Here too, the Saudis have a sign identifying it as an archaeological site, and it's patrolled by police. book of Exodus says that Moses built an altar of uncut stone at the foot of Mount Sinai and also set up 12 pillars to symbolize the 12 tribes of Israel.
Right here at the foot of the mountain, we see this structure that resembles an ancient altar. And what we are standing in right now is probably the animal chutes that would lead them to sacrifice at the foot of the mountain. The animal chutes lead to this area of the structure, which may have been the slaughter platform for animal sacrifices. The Saudis, of course, say that this has nothing to do with Moses, but they admit that they found animal waste and bones underneath this area when they dug. People who have been to this site decades ago say that this site used to be much cleaner, and you could more clearly see the remains of about 12 pillars, as well as a stone platform that they would stand on. Near the altar and the 12 pillars, Moses reads to the Israelites the Book of the Covenant, and they agree to it. This means that Moses probably had a spot right above the altar that served as a stage in order to address the people. Right above this area with the altar and the pillars, there is an area that could have been a perfect spot for Moses to be seen and heard when the covenant is made. A Saudi local actually pointed to this part of the mountain and showed us how Moses' voice would have echoed like he was speaking in a natural amphitheater. The Bible says that a brook flowed down from Mount Sinai, providing water for the Israelites. The brook must have come down near the altar at the foot of the mountain for the sacrifices to take place. And the brook must have come near the golden calf because Moses threw its remains into the river. It's very easy to see where there was once a stream coming down from this mountain, where there's evidence of burnt sacrifices. It then ends up near the possible golden calf worship site. There's even evidence of wells around the area where a pool of water would have formed, proving that a large population once lived there. According to the Bible, the prophet Elijah travels to Mount Sinai, and once he gets there, he goes into a cave, and that's where he talks to God. The real Mount Sinai must therefore have a cave that is accessible, safe, and suitable for sleeping. This cave above the altar is about 15 feet high, 20 feet long, and 20 feet deep. If this is the real Mount Sinai, then this is almost certainly the Cave of Elijah. On the way to Mount Sinai, the Israelites camp where there's no water. Moses goes up to a distinct rock and strikes it with his rod, and miraculously, water pours forth for his followers. The historian Josephus said that the split rock could still be seen in his time, and it was so big that it could not have been moved. Is it possible that this split rock still remains today, testifying to the accuracy of this story? The answer is yes, and it is stunning. This split rock was first discovered by Jim and Penny Caldwell, an American couple that was working in Saudi Arabia in the early 1990s. The local Bedouins have long had two names for this area, the Water of Moses and the Split Rock of Moses. This split rock is on top of a 100-foot hill and is somewhere between 40 and 60 feet high. And what's really amazing about this specific location in the valley along the possible route to Mount Sinai is that the rocks underneath the split rock are smooth, as if tons and tons of water poured forth, forming a miniature lake at the bottom for the Israelites to drink from. If you have a relationship with a local, they'll tell you that this area is related to Moses. But the Bedouins that live here will try to keep you out. We saw this firsthand as we were chased out of the area. Okay, so we are flooring it. We're gonna see if this guy follows us. We heard 2 gunshots. This guy's like, doesn't really want to party.
The Bible says the area near the split rock where the Israelites fought the Amalekites is named Rephidim, which means place of rest. Hebrew inscriptions we found there have been interpreted to say place of rest, the definition of Rephidim. Closer to the mountain, inscriptions have been found that Dr. Miles Jones, a scholar of ancient Hebrew, believes are talking about the battle with the Amalekites. He says one of the inscriptions refers to the death of an Amalekite. Nearby, there are two inscriptions that Dr. Jones believes are marking where a Hebrew mother and daughter died. The Bible says that God told the Israelites that they possess the land wherever the soles of their feet touch. Near the split rock and near the mountain, there are many inscriptions with an image of a foot and a sandal. Next to the image, there is Proto-Hebrew writing that means the sole of the foot. We also found inscriptions that were translated and found to refer to Yahweh, the Hebrew name for God. There's another area near the mountain named Wadi Musa, or the Valley of Moses. Here, a depiction of a menorah was found, and it might be the oldest depiction of a menorah known today. Now, a new eyewitness has come forward to reveal that the Saudis have been hiding the evidence of the Exodus since at least World War II. This man was an American pilot who met the king of Saudi Arabia. Bob Cornuke was one of the first people to reach Jabal Maqla in the 1980s, and he recently interviewed that pilot and made the footage available for this video.
It's an honor to meet you.
Well, thank you.
Our lives have intersected possibly in something very historic. And we're talking about where the real Mount Sinai is located. And I had no idea that someone as far back as World War II would have seen the mountain and had been told that the mountain was the holy mountain of Moses. Did any of the Muslims tell you that that was a holy mountain?
Oh yes. I guess everybody in the military knew it was holy.
Yeah.
Well, they forbidden me to fly around it, and it was off limits that I'd be killed either by God or by maybe some of them, I don't know. And when I took off, I was half scared to death. You bet I flew around it.
But it was different than the rest of the mountains because it was black on top?
Oh, it was a blackish green. It was dark enough to be somewhat frightening. You don't know what I really believe. I think it's Mount Sinai. I think God let me fly around it. That's what I think. I think He let you and me both live.
Why haven't we heard about this other candidate for Mount Sinai? Why has almost the entire focus been on the traditional site despite its lack of compelling evidence?
Think about how many things line up with the biblical story right here at this mountain.
There's a beach and path where the Red Sea crossing could have happened, matching the biblical account. You can see how the Israelites could have camped near Elim with its 12 wells and 70 palms. Along the way to Jabal Maqla, there's a split rock and area suitable for camping. There's a mountain referred to as the Mountain of Moses, with a large plain in front of it where millions of Israelites could have camped. You can see an altar of uncut stone at the foot of the mountain, where there's evidence of burnt sacrifices, right where it should be. There's evidence of bull worship, and you can see exactly how Moses would have seen the golden calf worship going on as he came down from the mountain. There's a brook that comes down from the mountain just like the Exodus story says. You can see right where the cave of Elijah might have been. All of these little details have to fit, and they fit. After I came back from the trip, people asked how I felt standing there where so few people have been able to, and the predictable feelings were easy to describe. The adrenaline, amazement, awe, but there was an emotion that was more difficult to describe. I didn't deserve to be there. I'm not someone who's given away his wealth to the poor, I'm not a scientist or a pastor, and there are still days where I feel like I have no faith at all. But then as I looked at the mountains, I remembered something. The Bible has a clear pattern where God doesn't use the best or the most expected. Even Moses was so insecure that he didn't want the job. Rather than using the most qualified, the pattern is that God uses the unexpected, the insecure, the flawed, the depressed, the doubter, the underdog. Every single person can make a difference, especially those that think they can't. As you watch this, the Saudis are constructing a super city that is planned to be 33 times the size of New York. If all of us don't take action, Saudi construction in the area may destroy key evidence and prevent excavation for the foreseeable future. To try to stop these sites from being threatened, we have set up a website and a nonprofit organization to support further research and to convince the Saudis to preserve the sites so they can be saved and investigated. We're entering a period that we have never been in before, one where this footage and other evidence of the Exodus and the Bible overall are only a click away for anyone on Earth with an internet connection. And as these sites are revealed, it will change the Middle East forever and impact the billions of people who follow Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and those with no faith at all. The world is about to change.
Wow. All right. So we have a video there from Ryan Morrow. Very good work. Kind of compiling a lot of the great footage and research regarding this topic of the actual location of Mount Sinai, right? So, you know, it's little details like this. It's some of that imagery he even inserted there, the Reed Sea and the coral encrusted chariot wheels, which are not naturally forming shapes in nature of coral to just grow up in the shape of like a base of a chariot wheel. Things like that are just so inspiring. And I remember back in 2014, 2015, when I first started looking into some of this stuff, these were the things that really kickstarted my empirical understanding and started that faith walk of, hey, there's proof that what we believe in, what we talk about in the scriptures is legitimate, it's true. And if we can prove that the Elohim that delivered the children of Israel from Egypt there's archaeological evidence, and there's all these sites that line up with the narrative, then that means what he commanded them off the mountain actually means something. It actually matters. And so just, you know, little faith boosters, right? You know, seeing some of these proofs. And it's so encouraging to see some of this information come to light. It's really only since 2019, actually, that people are able to, in a touristic fashion, go and visit these locations. It's only been recently that Saudi has opened it up for those type of passports. Previously, you had to like go under either a work visa or something. But just really interesting. Isn't that so interesting, guys? I'd love to see what some of your thoughts are. Anyways, I'm going to now jump over, and I'd like to read through the Targumic version of our Torah portion, and then we might look at some of the New Testament and the prophets' writings, and we're going to get going with that. So if you have any other thoughts that you'd like to share, please drop them in the comments. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen of the Pentateuchal Targum version of this Torah portion. Here we go. Hopefully you guys can see that. Let's see here. Yeah, my windows are all kind of wonky today, but hopefully you guys will be able to read along. So once again, you can go over here. It's targum.info is the website, and you just go over here to Targum and Text, Pentateuchal Targum. You go down here to the chapters we're reading, 18 through 22. And that brings us to Yitro. All right, so let me zoom this in so you guys can have a little bit more of a chance of reading along, and we'll get into it. So And Jethro, prince of Midian, the father-in-law of Moses, heard all that the Lord had done for Moses and Israel, his people, that the Lord had brought forth Israel from Mitzrayim. And Jethro, the father-in-law of Moshe, took Zipporah, his wife, whom Moshe had sent back from him after going into Mitzrayim, and his 2 sons, the name of one who is Gershom, because he said, I am a dweller in a strange land, which is not mine. And the name of the other is Eliezer, for he said, the God of my fathers was my helper and saved me from the sword of Pharaoh. And Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe, and the sons of Moshe, and his wife came to Moses in the desert in which he was sojourning, hard by the mountain upon which the glory of the Lord was revealed to Moses at the beginning. And he said to Moses, I, thy father-in-law Jethro, have come to thee to be a proselyte. If thou wilt not receive me on my own account, receive me for the sake of thy father, or thy wife, and her 2 sons who are with her. And Moses came forth from under the cloud of glory to meet his father-in-law, and did obeisance, kissed him, and made him a proselyte. And they asked of each other's welfare, and came to the tabernacle in the house of instruction. And Moses recounted to his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh in the Mitzrayim on behalf of Israel, all the hardship they had found in the way of the sea of Suf at Marah and Rephidim, and how Amalek had fought with them. I believe I said Amorite earlier when I was talking about the guys had their arms up. Apologize, it was Amalek. Had fought with them, and the Lord had delivered them. And Jethro rejoiced over all the good which the Lord had done unto Israel, that he had given them manna and the well, and that he had saved them from the hand of Mitzri. And Jethro said, blessed be the name of the Lord, who hath saved you from the hand of the Mitzri. If you're not familiar, Egypt, the modern term Egypt, the ancient name of that land and that people is Mitzrayim. So that's why it's called the Mitzrayim. And from the hand of Pharaoh hath saved the people from under the tyranny of the Mitzri. Now have I known that the Lord is stronger than all gods, for by the very thing by which the Mitzri wickedly would have punished Israel by drowning them in the sea upon themselves, came the punishment. And being punished in the sea, Jethro took burnt offerings and holy sacrifices before the Lord, and Aaron all the elders of Israel, and came to eat bread with the father-in-law of Moses before the Lord, and Moshe stood and ministered before them. And the day after the day of reconciliation, Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood before Moses from the morning till evening. And the father-in-law of Moses saw how much he toiled and labored for his people, and he said, what thing is this that thou art doing to the people? Why dost thou sit alone to judge, and all the people stand before thee from morning until evening? And Moses said to his father-in-law, because the people came to me to inquire for instruction from before the Lord, when they have a matter for judgment, they come to me, and I judge between a man and his fellow, and make them know the statutes and the law of the Lord. And the father-in-law of Moses said to him, this thing that thou art doing is not well ordered. Thou wilt verily wear thyself away, Aaron also and his sons and the elders of thy people, because the thing is heavier than thou art able to do thyself, should take part in it. Now hearken to me, and I will advise thee, and may the word of the Lord be thy helper. So here's one of the awesome things that we love about the Targum, and primary reason I personally like to reference the Targum in these studies is the Memra, or this term, the phrase, the word of the Lord, to me is a constant reference to, I guess the what is the seminary term would be a Christophany, or a instance of the mediator, who in John chapter 1, we have the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and in it the reference being to Yahushua, the Messiah. And this phraseology is kind of whitewashed from our traditional texts, but there are many instances where I believe this is in reference to Yahushua and interacting on behalf of the Father, right, with mankind throughout history. It's always been the word of the Lord that is interacting with mankind, Yeshua, right? Because he's the mediator. He's always been the mediator. He was in the garden. He was the one who closed the door of the ark. He was the one, and this is my personal opinion of the significance of the Targums and why I like reading through it. I know we use the Targums a lot, so I just want to give you guys a reminder who are tuning in. might not have heard an explanation before. But anyways, when thou art with the people who seek instruction from before the Lord, thou shouldst take a fair before the Lord and give them counsel about the statutes and laws, make them understand the prayers they are to offer the house of the congregation, the manner of visiting the sick, of burying the dead, of being fruitful in doing good, in the work and process of justice, and how to conduct themselves among the wicked. But thou should elect from all the people of ability to fear the Lord upright men who hate to receive the mammon of dishonesty. Mammon, of course, is a reference to the god of money, right? And there's very specific Torah principles, commandments from the Most High, of not receiving bribery and judgment to distort justice, and super appoint them to be heads of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and tens. And what I like to pull out of this is it's really significant that this kind of hierarchy system was set up. You have the heads of the tribes, you have the 70 elders, right? And then you have kind of this dissemination of responsibility and authority throughout the tribes of Israel. And I can't help but to wonder how long they continued to practice this throughout the days of Joshua and the armies that were going to defeat the Canaanites. It's really cool to think that this is how, like, the structure of Israel was broken down. And so I guess you could have, the heads of the thousands would be your generals, and then you got the, captains, lieutenants, and, the sergeant, I don't know. But anyways, I found it interesting that this structure was kind of given to Moses from this, polytheistic guy who comes to be a proselyte. And he's like, okay, yeah. And let them judge the people at all times, and every great manner bring to thee, but every little thing let them judge themselves, that they may lighten the burden that is upon thee, and bear it with thee. If thou wilt do this, and exempt thyself from judging every case, as the Lord shall give thee instruction, thou will be able to continue to hear them. So I'm not going to keep reading over. I know we've heard the Torah portion, already, the audio drama, but I always like to look through this just in case there's any, slight differentiation. Let me just scroll here through. I don't want to be too repetitive, just kind of reading through it since we've already listened to it. Here's interesting. You've seen when I did the Mitzri, how I bear you upon the clouds as upon eagle's wings from Pelusin, to take you to the place of the sanctuary, there to solemnize to Pesach. And the same night brought you down to Pelusin, and from thence have brought you now to receive the doctrine of my law. And now, if you will truly hearken to my word, it's just so messianic. I hope you guys see the connections between this term of the word that the Targum brings out and our Messiah, who is the word made flesh, right? And keep my covenants, and you shall be more beloved before me than all the peoples of the face of the earth. And before me you shall be crowned kings and sanctified priests and holy people. And these are the words thou shalt speak to the sons of Israel. And Moses came that day and called the elders of Israel and set in order for them all these words which the Lord had commanded. And all the people responded together and said, all that the Lord hath spoken, we will do. Let me see here. Keep reading. We have a lot of parallels between this time and the Feast of Shavuot, or Pentecost, as a lot of people know. And let me see here. All right, so very interesting. It moves on and continues to go into Exodus 20, which talks about the Ten Commandments. And I wanted to point this out, which I find fascinating. Are you guys familiar that the Catholic Bible has a different set of Ten Commandments than our traditional Hebrew text, or the Protestant Bible, I guess you could call it, but really I'm not a Protestant Catholic, so I don't claim to be a Protestant. I think this is really interesting to check this out. In this topic of the Ten Commandments, what do you guys make of the fact that in the Catholic Bible, the Ten Commandments is totally different? And this is from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, of course, but when you read their Bible, it's like totally changed. And of course, we heard, the audio drama version of the Ten Commandments. It has always been interesting to me how they took out the second commandment, which is you shall not make for yourselves an idol. And they made the fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath day and keeping it holy. They made that the third commandment. And then they split the last commandment, commandment 10, into two different commandments. So commandment 10, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, was split into you shall not covet your neighbor's wife and you shall not covet your neighbor's goods. So just, man, so interesting. Kind of seems redundant to not covet your neighbor's wife, since it also says you shall not commit adultery. But this is something that has always interested me. I remember going to there was a hospital that had a little Catholic chapel in it or something. I think I went down there to play on their piano. I remember looking through the Bible. This is the first time I discovered the very glaring difference between the text that all the translators passed down and the text that the Catholics very egregiously changed. And so since we're covering the Ten Commandments, I wanted to mention this to you guys because it's very interesting. And a lot of people who are practicing the Catholic faith, they're not aware, because there's a lot of trust in man and tradition and the systematic, obedience to the priests and catechisms, which are put over top of any personal study or anything that has been added to the faith of the years. They tend to trust the catechism. They tend to trust the church a little bit too much. And so it's kind of a big surprise sometimes when you share things like this, like, hey, the Ten Commandments are totally different in your Bible. Why is that? But it's a great conversation piece. We've been watching through. Somebody asked what year is that Catholic Bible? I believe most years of the Catholic Bible are this way. I don't know what particular year that picture was, but very interesting. Let's go ahead and look over here. I think I pulled up. By the way, earlier I was referencing some obscure, topic from a Targum text from my friend Isaiah and Bree. They've put together the Library of Shalom, and so this is a fantastic place that has a ton of these Targums and kind of pseudepigraphal and very interesting texts that are, sometimes very different from our ones we have in our traditional scriptures. Worth studying, sometimes you got to spit out the bones with studies like this, but this is the website that I was actually reading that topic that I mentioned earlier about him saying to Moses, hey, I went down to Ishmael's descendants, I went down to Esau's descendants, and they both didn't want anything to do with me. So anyways, I just wanted to mention that. I had an interesting comment here from what I was just mentioning. It looks like Catherine says, this is my personal experience, but I grew up Catholic and I didn't even know what the Bible was. They all read the New Testament in Mass, but I never realized what it was. I also went to catechism. Well, hey, just thank you for, joining us. I mean, there's people from all types of backgrounds and denominational history that are looking into keeping the Sabbaths, keeping the Torah, keeping the commandments, exposing the traditions of men, as prophesied, right? The Gentiles will come from the ends of the earth saying, our fathers have inherited lies and things wherein there's no profit, right? Well, why is that? Well, it's because there's been a lot of man that has had a role in dictating what people should believe. But in the advent of the internet age, right, as information has been able to pass porously through the internet, as we have gained access to all these documents and texts that traditionally you would only find seminarians or people with access to obscure kind of libraries or whatever, or people who were linguists with the ability to read in multiple languages and to kind of study into all these topics. Well, because of the internet, we have translations and we have all these texts that we can access and can cross-reference and find things that have second witnesses and see, is there a common narrative that is not contradictory to our traditional Bible, but that expounds and adds to the context of what we're studying. And so that's why we like to talk about all these extra biblical texts, because there's a thread of truth oftentimes that can be found in a lot of these. And I know I'm going on a little rant here, but here is the book of Jasher. I just wanted to read through this with you guys, and let me zoom it in here for us to read along. There's just a few verses here in this text regarding our Torah portion, so I'll just read this. I believe this is chapter 81 of the book of Jasher, covers our particular Torah portion this week. And the book of Jasher, or this text that was translated in the 1850s or something, has a lot of interesting second witnesses with the Targum translations. So that's why I like to reference the Targum and the book of Jasher, because they oftentimes say the same thing. And so when you have enough resources that are all saying the same thing, you can make the empirical decision to say, okay, well, a lot of people are saying this. As long as it's not teaching me some kind of crazy new doctrine and it's just adding historical context or expanding on the story, there's a good likelihood this is how it happened. And I mean, if we're dealing with what we got. So starting in verse 42, and on the day the Lord saved Israel from the hand of Egypt, and all the children of Israel saw the Egyptians had perished, they beheld the great hand of the Lord, and what he had performed in Egypt and in the sea. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel the song unto the Lord, and on that day the Lord caused the Egyptians to fall before them. And all Israel sang in concert, saying, I will sing to the Lord, for he is great and exalted. The horse and the rider is cast into the sea. Behold, it written in the book of the law of God. And after this, the children of Israel proceeded on their journey and encamped in Marah. And the Lord gave to the children of Israel statutes and judgments in that place in Marah. The Lord commanded the children of Israel to walk in all his ways and to serve him. And they journeyed from Marah and came to Elim. And in Elim, there were 12 springs of water and 70 date trees. We just saw that video, right? Really kind of exposing some just very interesting locations. You can visualize it now. And the children encamped there by the waters. They journeyed from Elim and came to the wilderness of Sin. Interesting language choice, right? Of name. And on the 15th day of the second month after their departure from Egypt. And at that time, the Lord gave them manna to the children of Israel to eat. And the Lord caused food to rain from heaven for the children of Israel day by day. Interesting here. So I'm just going to throw this out there because I know some people might not be familiar with this particular doctrine or thought process, but there's a belief set of the lunar Sabbatarians, which I'm not of. I believe in a cyclical seventh-day pattern. I see a lot of issues and contradictions and a lot of kind of hopium and let the Spirit lead you to believe this when it comes to the lunar Sabbath kind of calculations. But in this text of Jasher, I'm just going to throw this out here. Isn't it interesting that, somebody let me know cross-reference wise if our other texts are also saying that on the 15th day of the second month that the Lord gave manna, right? According to the kind of the lunar Sabbatarian calculation of the months and stuff, that the 15th day of the month will generally always be a Sabbath, if I'm not mistaken. So if you practice or if you're familiar, maybe you can correct me. But the manna falling on a 15th day of the month would be a contradiction of what happens later when he tells them, gather what you're going to gather during the week. On the 6th day, gather double, because on the 7th day will be a Sabbath. You're not to gather manna on the 7th day. So if the 15th day of the month, according to that particular thought process, is always a Sabbath, then why was the manna falling on the 15th day of the month? Which to me is another kind of a point, proving that that's an inaccurate way of calculating our monthly process and our Sabbaths. I know this is very obscure to some people, but it's something we've discussed in the past, and it's just very interesting and popped into my head there to mention as I was reading this. So at that time, the Lord gave the manna to the children of Israel to eat, and the Lord caused food to rain from heaven for the children of Israel day by day. Children of Israel ate manna for 40 years, all the days they were in the wilderness, until they came to the land of Canaan to possess it. They proceeded from wilderness of Sin and camped in Alush, and they proceeded from Alush and camped in Rephidim. And when the children of Israel were in Rephidim, Amalek, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esau, the brother of Zepho, came to fight with Israel. So it's interesting. It really kind of breaks down, the Amalek, being of Esau, which helps, tie this whole family drama together, which is, a theme that you find in a lot of these texts, that a lot of these bad guys seem to be distant relatives in a lot of ways. And he brought with him 801,000 men, magicians and conjurers, and prepared for battle with Israel and Rephidim. And they carried on a great and severe battle against Israel. And the Lord delivered Amalek and the people in the hands of Moses, the children of Israel, into the hand of Joshua, the son of Nun, the Ephrathite, the servant of Moses. And the children of Israel smote Amalek and his people at the edge of the sword. But the battle was very sore upon the children of Israel. The Lord said to Moses, write this thing as a memorial for thee in a book, and place it in the hand of Joshua the son of Nun, thy servant, and thou shalt command the children of Israel, saying, thou shalt come to the land of Canaan, thou shalt utterly efface the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And this, of course, gets into the drama that we see later on with the first king of Israel, King Saul, who spared the king of Amalek and utterly disgraced himself, lost his kingship to David because of his disobedience. And it was from Amalek that spawned Haman during the story of Esther. So very interesting. You kind of see the tie through all these things here. And Moses did so, and he took the book and wrote upon these words, saying, remember that Amalek had done to thee in the road when thou went forth from Egypt, who met thee in the road and smote thy rear, even those that were feeble behind thee, when thou wast faint and weary. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy God has given rest from all thy enemies round about in the land the Lord giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven, and the king who shall have pity on Amalek, or upon his memory, or upon his seed, and behold, I will require it of him, I will cut him off from his people. Moses wrote all these things, and he joined the people of Israel, respecting all these matters. All right, chapter 82. And the children of Israel proceeded from Rephidim, and they encamped in the wilderness of Sinai on the 3rd month from their going forth from Egypt. Oh, hey, guess what? We're actually into a segment that is talking about our current Torah portion. I started a little early. Sorry. Let me see here. Somebody's commented there's differences between Jasher and the book of Exodus. So he's commenting Exodus 16. They took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation to Israel came into the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the month, 2nd month, departing out of the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of Israel murmured against manna was given. And maybe you have to point out more specifically the contradiction. There's always language differences. So anyways, keeping on, at the time Reuel the Midianite, the father-in-law of Moses, with Zipporah's daughter and her 2 sons, for he had heard the wonders of the Lord which he had done in Israel, and he delivered them from the hand of Egypt. And Reuel came to Moses in the wilderness where he encamped. There was the mountain of God. And Moses went forth to meet his father-in-law with great honor, and all Israel was with him. And Reuel and his children met amongst the Israelites for many days, and Reuel knew the Lord from that day forward. So here's another seeming contradiction. since you're bringing out some differences here, it's mentioning Reuel here as opposed to Jethro. So that's a good point to point out. In the 3rd month, the children of Israel departed from Egypt, and on the 6th day thereof, the Lord gave Israel the 10 commandments on Mount Sinai. And Israel heard all these commandments, and all Israel rejoiced exceedingly in the Lord on that day. And the glory of the Lord rested on Mount Sinai, and he called to Moses, and Moses came in the midst of a cloud and ascended the mountain. And Moses was upon the mount 40 days and 40 nights. He ate no bread and drank no water, and the Lord instructed him in the statutes and judgments in order to teach the children of Israel. And the Lord wrote 10 commandments, which he had commanded the children of Israel upon the 2 tablets of stone, which he gave Moses to command the children of Israel. And at the end of 40 days and 40 nights, when the Lord had finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, then the Lord gave Moses tablets of stone written with the finger of God. And the children of Israel saw Moses have tarried to come down from the mount. They gathered around Aaron and said, "As for this man, Moses, we know not what's become of him. Now rise up, make us gods who shall go before us." All right, and I think that kind of concludes anything that might cover this particular Torah portion. But back into the chat over here, the comment is, Elam and Sinai on the 15th day of the 2nd month after departing out of the land of Egypt. Then the manna came the next day, which would have been the 16th day, not the 15th. So if that is a contradiction, that is interesting to investigate, because, we're not here to just accept extra biblical text as truth above, a more trusted canon, right? However, like I said, there are details that find second witnesses in a lot of these texts. So it's good to point out some of these contradictions. I do think it is interesting that if the language was, and at that time, then perhaps my whole premise of it giving manna on the 15th day was incorrect. And it was the 16th day. But good point. Thank you for pointing that out. All right. So let's jump over here to, okay, so Jubilees. I don't see anything particular. Let me see here. Yeah, so nothing I really want to bring out, I don't think. But let's jump over here to torahportions.ffoz. And the half Torah portion for this week is, let's see here. Oh, getting all lost. Huh. Having trouble getting to it. What's going on here? I was literally just looking at the page. It looks like Isaiah 6, 1 through 7. Okay, here we go. Here it is. All right. All right. Like our Torah portion workbook says, if you see any connections, please put them in the chat besides the video, and we'll get into a discussion about it. Isaiah 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, and the whole earth is filled with his glory. Hold on. You guys are going to think this is cool. If I can see it. All right, so I'm not shilling anything. This is just that's something I've been working on, top secret. But I actually recently used Rob had an old 3D printer that Sheila let me borrow, and experiment with. And it's really cool. And I found some models of a seraphim. And we're just, reading through and mentioning the seraphim. So I wanted to show you guys this sweet seraphim that I 3D printed. Let me go full screen for a second so you guys can see it, just to kind of get the perspective of what we're reading through here. And you have the two wings covering the face, and then the four in the back. So I think it was super cool. It's just I wanted to show you guys because I just find this stuff so fascinating. Whenever people say, "Hey," to a significant other, like, "Hey, you look like an angel." If we're talking about biblically accurate descriptions of angels, sometimes it can be pretty out of this world, right? Like, I don't know. Are you saying I look like a cherubim or a seraphim, or do I look like a ophanim? The thing with all the eyeballs and like, oh man. So keep in mind when you compliment somebody saying you look like an angel, sometimes it can accurately, not so much. Here's another one. This is a cherubim that I 3D printed just to show you guys. And this is the head of the. I know it's hard to see because it's white with our lighting here, but it has the head of a man, the head of a lion, the head of a bull, and the head of an eagle, with the four wings. So, very, very interesting. But all right, show and tell time's done, and keep a lookout for my secret project. I'll be talking about it here pretty soon. Last preview that you'll never. Yeah, I can't get into it. It's Shabbat. All right. So, anyways, let's keep reading. Here, where were we? Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundation of the threshold shook of the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, woe is me, for I am lost. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people. Sorry, I didn't have the scripture up. Of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal that had taken the tongs of the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. Now, just a quick pause, something that I see connected with this and maybe our Torah portions, or the story of Moses is, do you guys recall that account in the book of Jasher and also the Targums that talk about how Moses, when he was 3 years of age, reached over and grabbed the crown off of Pharaoh's head, and they were going to put him to death because it's a sign he wants to take over your kingdom. And Balaam comes in there, gives wicked counsel with his two sons, Janus and Jambres, the two wizards, right? And says, oh, he's got to be put to death. He's obviously they're going to take your kingdom. And then an angel shows up incognito, right? And goes in and is like, well, let's put a test. Let's put a onyx stone, a black stone, and put a burning coal in front of the baby. And whatever he goes for, if he goes for the burning coal, that shows that he's just a dumb kid and he's going for something pretty. If he goes for the onyx stone, the stone of value, that shows he wants your kingdom. And of course, in that story, Moses was going to reach for the onyx stone, and the angel secretly moved his hand to grab the coal, and he takes the coal and he puts it in his mouth in this, telling of the story, and he burns his tongue, and that's accredited to why Moses has a speech impediment. And we've covered this in previous studies, but isn't it interesting that this scene plays out in the throne room of the Most High with Isaiah putting a coal to his mouth, just as supposedly, allegedly, Moses also had the coal touched to his tongue and mouth. So very interesting to me. Continuing on, and I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and whom will go for us? And he said, here I am, send me. And he said, go. Say this to the people: keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, but do not perceive. Make the heart of this people dull and their ears heavy, and blind their eyes, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their hearts and turn and be healed. And I said, how long, O Lord? And he said, until cities lie waste without inhabitant and houses without people, and the land is desolate waste, and the Lord removes people far away, and the forsaken places are many in the midst of the land, and though a tenth remain in it, it will be burned again like a terebinth or an oak, whose stump remains when it is felled. The holy seed is its stump. In the days of Ahaz, king of Jotham, son of Uzziah, king of Judah, Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, the king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to wage war against it, but could not yet mount an attack against it. When the house of David was told Syria is in league with Ephraim, the heart of Ahaz, the heart of his people, shook in the trees of the forest and shake before the wind. And the Lord said to Isaiah, go out to meet Ahaz and Jasher, your son, at the end of the conduit of the upper pool on the highway to the washer field. Say to him, be careful, be quiet, do not fear, and do not let your heart be faint because of these two smoldering stumps of firebrands and the fierce anger of resident Syria and the son of Remaliah, because Syria with Ephraim and the son of Remaliah has devised evil against you, saying, let us go up against Judah and terrify it. Let us conquer it for ourselves and set up son of Tabeel as king in the midst of it. All right. Isaiah 9, 5-6. For every boot of the trampling warrior is battle tumult, and every garment rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So if you guys have any personal associations, if you want to share those in the comments, if you see any kind of connections. And Tiffany said, I've never heard of the story of the onyx stone and the lump of coal. It's contained in this book of Jasher. I can't remember the chapter, but that's where you'll find the story. I also believe it possibly is referenced in the Targums, but just definitely a larger segment in the book of Jasher. All right, so let's see here. We have Matthew 19 as referenced for the New Testament portion. Let's go over to the Virtual House Church website and see what Rob had in here. A lot of text here. Matthew chapter 5, Matthew 15, Matthew 14, Acts chapter 6. I think the association in the New Testament is definitely the tie between the Feast of Pentecost and the giving of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit in the New Testament, and the giving of the Torah and the marriage covenant and at Sinai. And so I know that's what a lot of these texts cover. Let me see here. Yeah, I mean, guys, we're covering the Ten Commandments this week, and we can't spend enough time, just on those themselves, right? Let me see here. Let's jump over. I'm just going to scroll down, and I'll make a final kind of commentary on chapter 20, and then we'll wrap up for this week. And you guys can continue your own home studies or study with the Virtual House Church Discord server. And it's a great place to discuss any questions or you want to get into any studies. But make sure to join the Virtual House Church Discord server, and we've shared links in the chat for you to be able to join. There's a lot of categories on the server where people can share their knowledge about calendars and different, topics and this and that. So let's get ahead and get into the Ten Commandments. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Number one, have no other gods before me. And I'm just going to kind of critically go through each commandment and just, talk about applying it to myself, right? A lot of times having no other gods before me sounds like an easy thing. Well, I just believe God is God. But a lot of the times we find that we can create little g gods in our life. It's not just choosing to worship a different pantheon or a different name, person over here. You can turn things into a god in your life, and that's when you put it above the Creator in terms of obedience to worship. The terms worship and obedience are very, very similar in their usage, right? And whenever something is put above the Most High, and we disregard what His commandments are, and we keep our own, sometimes we can make ourselves our own God. And going on to the number 2, which was taken out of the Catholic Bible, as I demonstrated earlier. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under earth. You shall not bow down to serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. Very interesting, the carved image topic. And some people take it to the far extent of you can't literally make anything that represents something on earth, like a carving of a horse or something like that, even if you're not worshiping it. That's the far extreme. And then there's the I believe Islam kind of leans more to that route, right? You can't even have an image of something. And then there's the process of creating something that you're worshiping. Of course, we know very plainly that is not good either. Sometimes reading through this commandment, it makes me wonder about like television and, the images we put in front of ourselves. Are there elements that we should be careful of what we put before our eyes? And we should always be careful. But, what are some of your thoughts? How do you think the Catholics, can just ignore this? Of course, the argument would be veneration is not worship and such. But just an interesting, commandment for them to totally nix from the top 10, right? You shall not hold the name of the Lord your God in vain, for Yahuwah will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. In the Parsha 60 seconds video, I know we have it say, don't say his name as a cuss word. And that's always what I was taught growing up in the church system. It just means don't say his name as a cuss word. Don't say Jesus, right? However, while yes, that is a good thing to not, use his name as a curse, or as a blatant common thing to just shout when you hurt yourself. I also seem to believe that this. I also believe that this references, taking his identity, his character, claiming to be a Christian, right, and then doing the opposite, behaving the opposite. So, it's taking his name, marriage sense, in vain. So, big number 4 that is really overlooked by the modern Christian church through doctrine inherited from the Catholic Church, which is why they're Protestants. They ignore this one completely, or they've changed it to Sunday worship. It says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male servant or your female servant or your livestock or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Hey, which day of the week is Sunday? First day. Sometimes your calendar will look different, right? It'll have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? Sunday's stuck right at the end, almost as it's the end of the week. And with the way we look at our weekends in Western culture, it's, Saturday, Sunday, weekday starts again, right? And it's almost just a crazy it's just a crazy perspective that our culture has helped transition the worship of this, the Sabbath day from the seventh day to Sunday. A lot of Catholic influence there. I somebody commenting in the chat, are you guys not Christian? Well, whenever we look at modern Christianity and their practices, a lot of people kind of dissociate with the terminology because it can be convoluted with denominational Christianity, Catholic Christianity, Protestant Christianity, and a lot of these are not practicing the very things we're reading through right now. And your name's Muhammad, so I'm just gonna assume maybe you might have some type of Islamic influence or know people that are of that persuasion. And they've done the very same thing with the Sabbath day. They've transitioned a day of worship from the Sabbath. They don't keep the Sabbath. They keep Fridays as a day of worship and prayer, which is something to look at as well. And it's something that is consistently been nixed from our culture because it is a statement of freedom to say, this is the day that my Creator rested, I will rest also. It's called bondage by the Christians. It's called legalism to people that think keeping the Sabbath is somehow not a commandment anymore for the people of the Most High. But the reason it starts with remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy is because he knew our people would forget it. He knew that our culture would blind us to it. And that's the significance of the Sabbath day, is because not only is it a mark throughout the scriptures, it's one of the most repeated commandments that it's like, hey, keep my Sabbaths, keep my Sabbath, keep my Sabbath. And it's not just the weekly Sabbath either. It's also the yearly high Sabbaths, right? The festivals, the appointed times. And also, just to throw this in there, sometimes people focus, they can, go from one extreme to the other, which is a tendency of mankind, right? And they can focus too much on keeping a Sabbath day, the Sabbath day, right? But forget working 6 days, which is also part of the commandment, right? 6 days you shall labor. So, we're not to be lazy bums. Muhammad, are you guys Jew or Christian? I don't understand. We are a lot. People come from a variety of backgrounds in, I guess, this Ephraim Awakening circle or Torah observant believers. It's more akin to people leaving traditional denominational Christianity and starting to apply the commandments that yes, Jewish people teach and keep Torah, but the Jewish community also has a lot of rabbinical tradition and Talmudic doctrine that they add to keeping the commandments. And the Christian community doesn't keep the commandments. They say, oh, it's through faith alone. A lot of commandments are done away with. They were nailed to the cross. And so we are whole Bible believers, as people are saying in the chat. And it's a great explanation as to our identity is to keep the commandments of the Most High and to have a faith and belief in Yeshua as salvation. And so that is kind of a very rough, brief summary of kind of our belief set here. We believe all of the commandments are the way we love our Creator in heaven. Our Elohim said, if you love me, keep my commandments. These are the words of Christ, himself, Yahushua. He showed us a perfect life of commandment keeping. We believe the Messiah is the mediator between man and Elohim, because it's only through perfect man being reconciled to a perfect Creator that there's any chance for atonement, because we're all sinful, fallen men. We've all fallen short of perfection. And so a perfect Creator can't be in the presence of imperfection without just, we'd be obliterated, right? But the Messiah and belief and faith in his redemption of mankind is a strong part of our faith here. And so that's just I probably rambled a little bit, but hopefully that's a good explanation of some of our faith, and why we keep Sabbath. We try to keep Torah. We try to learn the scriptures. We try to learn how to apply these obscure, seemingly commandments that really are boiled down to, like I shared at the beginning, loving Yah, loving our Creator, and loving man. And how we do that is dictated and detailed by his Torah. And it continues on. Next commandment: honor your father and mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God has given you. Very, very clear here. There's a blessing associated with honoring your father and mother, which is significant. I believe it's the first commandment here that mentions a blessing. Hold on, let me see. Oh, no, well, we start here, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love and keep my commandments. I guess you could call that the first blessing statement. But of course, if you keep his commandments, right, there's a promise associated with honoring your father and mother. It's long life. It's being, protected from hardship. And of course, it's very hard for people. Sometimes people have terrible parents, right? What does honor even mean? How do you honor somebody who's a scallywag? And that's a hard question. But our culture is so topsy-turvy, guys. It's really a process that you should try to apply to your life, even if it's hard, because there are promises associated with honoring, and whether that means, just honoring them for being the people that birthed you, right? Even if they're terrible, showing the love of Yah, right? And how you deal with them could be honoring them, whether it's in their old age when they're frail, and even if they didn't take care of you when you're young, maybe showing kindness and love to them is how you honor them, And so I know it's a hard topic, but next topic: you shall not murder. And very kind of short and to the point. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. These seem to be very straight to the point. It's all about loving your neighbor, right? Now, there's a premise that I want to bring out of here. There is a very clear distinction that keeping these commandments or not keeping them determines if we are blessed people or if we're cursed. Because sin, breaking the commandments, according to 1 John 3:4, is, breaking the commandments brings a curse. Because sin, right, leads to death when it grows and manifests and festers. And that's why it's so beautiful, the commandments that the Most High has given at Mount Sinai, and for his people then be a light to the nations to keep his commandments. His obedience is so significant to the life of believers today, which is not very heavily emphasized in very progressive Christianity. Some Christianity says, obedience is significant, but then they have a lot of doctrines that do away with certain commandments, or very Pauline perspectives that justify, living and behaving like the nations and claiming a faith in Christ. But what we come to find is that it's not specifically salvational, keeping the commandments. It's more tied to our love relationship. While at the same time, if you keep his commandments and you're in if you're in sin and you repent and you stop stealing, you're no longer going to be at risk of going to prison. And that's a type of salvational thing, because you're saved from going to prison. But that doesn't take away from as a community, our faith in Christ, and the importance and significance of faith being the reason that we are even able to be pleasing to the Most High, because first, by emulating Christ and applying his example in our life, which is walking the commandments perfectly, we then reap post the salvation experience the blessing of keeping his commandments, which is salvific in a way because it saves our life, because sin leads to death, and he's our example, and he is the way that leads to life. And I hope I'm not being too convoluted here. I'm sure somebody's going to try to jump on me with some doctrinal point. Anyways, continuing on, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. Now when all the people saw the thunder and flashes of lightning, the sound of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and trembled. They stood afar off and said to Moses, you speak to us, and we will listen. But do not let God speak to us, lest we die. And I want to highlight this, of course, is something that every year when I go through this, it really stands out to me as significant. Do you guys understand that these 10 big commandments, right, they were dictated to all the people from the mountain, and they freaked out? The literal voice of the Most High speaking to the people, right? And man, it's just crazy to think how, okay, terrified, first of all, but there's a point about this, which is they said to Moses, you go up, you speak to him, and get the commandments, and we'll listen, but don't let him speak to us anymore, or we'll die. And this happened after these 10 commandments were given. And so a lot of people say, oh, the 10 commandments are the only Old Testament commandments that really matter. All the other commandments are, Jewish, or they're ceremonial or civil laws. That's for the Jewish people, right? Separating even the difference between Jewish and Israel, right? Or Hebrew. Jews are only a few of the tribes, while Israel represented all the people, and some of them are now scattered to the nations and don't even know who they are. But regardless of blood, the significance being that the rest of the commandments were still binding commandments for the people of Yah, the people that choose to submit their lives and to become his people. And these were laws that were meant to go to the nations, as Israel was designed to be a light to bring these truths of the rest of the Torah, of rest of all the commandments that he's given, to all of the nations. And so what that means is that it's not just the 10. It's all of his word that was given to Moses was an expansion, or a very kind of a point-by-point breakdown on exactly how to keep the first 4 commandments, which are a summary of loving the Creator, loving Yah his way, not our way, his way, including the Sabbath day, by the way, Sunday-arians, right? But also the final 6 commandments, which are all about loving your neighbor. And when you read through the rest of the Torah, it's very specific examples of how to do these top 10, right? Because the people were too terrified to hear the details. They said, Moses, you go up and hear the rest. And that's why they're as significant, and that's, Yeshua says in the New Testament, he was asked, what are the greatest commandments? Love God, love your neighbor. And he then continues on to say, for on these 2 hang all the Torah and the prophets. All right. And so it's not replace all the Torah and the prophets, it's hang, because they're a summary, right? And the 2 commandments, love Yah and love your neighbor, are a summary of the 10 commandments. And the 10 commandments are a summary of all of the various commandments that are dictated to very specific people. Anyways, continuing on, talks about you shall not make gods of silver to be before me, nor shall you make yourselves gods of gold. And then they go right into, of course, the well-known scene of the sin of the golden calf. So let me just look over here at the chat for a moment. All right, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. We're already 2 hours in, so this is probably the longest live Virtual House Church I've done recently. Okay, so we're going to wrap up with that. Thank you guys for participating in this discussion, this study. You can continue on, of course, in the Virtual House Church Discord channel. We've shared that link several times. Further discussion, a lot of people with varying backgrounds and beliefs. So it's a good place to, with respect, engage in an intellectual conversation to build up your faith. And keep in mind, we all come from a variety of backgrounds, and our primary goal here is to extricate the doctrines of man that have hidden the commandments and the significance of obedience to the Most High's commandments, and submitting our lives to His commandments is how we follow the example of Yahushua, right? The Christ, right? Which was our example. And so that's all, guys. So Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining the Virtual House Church. And I think we'll wrap up with our the Aaronic blessing. And see you guys next time.
יברכך יחוה וישמרך, יאר יחוה פניו לך וחונקה, יישא יחוה פניו לך לך שלום, יישא יחוה פניו לך ויעשה לך שלום, ויעשה לך שלום, ויעשה לך שלום.
Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make His face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. Yahuwah make His face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace.
Yahuwah Teven Di
su rostro en ti.